I wasn't expecting a phone call that night. I was sitting on the couch, watching the same reruns I had watched 1,000 times before, trying to fill the silence that had become my constant companion since the divorce. Life had fallen into a strange, predictable rhythm after Sarah left. She was gone, and I was supposed to move on, just like everyone told me I should. But what no one ever warned me about was the creeping emptiness that settled in. That feeling of knowing you're alive, but not really living. You wake up, go through the motions, and wait for something, anything, to shake you out of the numbness. That's when it happened, the phone call. It wasn't a number I recognized, and I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, some tiny, barely audible voice, told me to answer. I picked up. Greg, the voice on the other end said, low and strained, almost unrecognizable. Who is this? I asked, my heart already starting to race. Just listen. There's no time for introductions. If you're hearing this, something has gone terribly wrong. You need to know the truth. I sat up straight, suddenly alert. My mind raced. The voice was unfamiliar, yet there was something eerily familiar about it. It was almost as if the person knew me, or at least, knew something I didn't. Who is this? What's going on? I demanded, now standing, pacing around my dimly lit living room. There's no time. Do you remember the night Sarah left? The voice asked, ignoring my question. Do you remember how she just disappeared? My stomach tightened at the mention of Sarah, my ex-wife, the woman I once thought I knew so well. It had been 3 months since she walked out the door, leaving only a note and a few broken promises behind. The night she left was a blur, but it was the last night I saw her. I remember, I said, my voice hollow. That's the problem, Greg, the voice replied. You think you remember, but you don't. You've been lied to. The truth is darker than you could ever imagine. I felt a chill run down my spine. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't some prank. Whoever this was, they knew things. Too many things. I don't understand. I stammered, feeling the ground slip out from under me. What are you talking about? What did Sarah do? The voice was quieter now, almost as if they were afraid of being heard. I can't tell you everything over the phone, but you need to listen carefully. Sarah didn't leave because of you. She didn't just walk away like you were told. Someone made her leave. Someone dangerous. And now they're after you too. My head spun. Dangerous? After me? What the hell was this person talking about? My life, my reality, was spinning out of control. What do you mean? I managed to croak. Who's after me? The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it said, I'll send you something. A message. You need to open it when you're alone. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone. The line went dead before I could say another word. I stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. The weight of the conversation hung heavily in the air, like a storm cloud threatening to break. Minutes passed. I didn't know what to think. It felt like I had just entered a world I didn't belong in. A world where everything I thought I knew, about Sarah, about my life, about myself, was a lie. I dropped onto the couch, my hands shaking. The emptiness I had been feeling for months had now been replaced by something far worse, dread. But then, just as I was starting to process what had happened, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My mind raced, wondering if it was the same voice from the phone. A part of me almost didn't want to answer. But I had to. I couldn't just sit here. I needed answers, no matter how terrifying they might be. I opened the door slowly, and standing there, in the dim light of the hallway, was a man I had never seen before. He wasn't tall or imposing, but there was something in his eyes that made me feel like he knew more about me than I knew about myself. He held out a small, plain envelope, no return address, just my name scribbled on the front in black ink. Take it, he said, his voice flat. You'll need it. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away without another word, disappearing into the night as quickly as he had appeared. I stood there for a moment, staring at the envelope in my hand. It felt wrong. Something about it was off. My heart raced as I slowly tore it open, my mind already preparing for whatever came next. Inside, there was only one piece of paper. I unfolded it and read the words, my hands trembling. Greg, if you're reading this, everything has changed. I'm sorry for the lies, but now you have to face the truth. Sarah didn't leave because she wanted to. She was forced to. And now they're coming for you. You can't run. You can't hide. You've been part of something far bigger than you realize. My pulse quickened. I felt a cold sweat form on the back of my neck. I dropped the paper, the words spinning in my head, my vision blurring. I couldn't process it. It didn't make sense. I didn't know it then, but that moment, the moment I read those words, was the moment my life would change forever. The moment I would discover that the world I thought I knew was nothing more than an illusion. And as I looked out into the dark night, I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. I spent the next few hours staring at the envelope, turning it over and over in my hands, trying to make sense of everything. The words in the note kept swirling in my mind, refusing to let me focus on anything else. Sarah didn't leave because she wanted to. She was forced to. Those words felt like a slap in the face. For months, I told myself that Sarah had left because she was unhappy with me, that our marriage had simply run its course. But now this mysterious message was turning everything upside down. The phone call from the unknown voice had already set the wheels in motion, and now this envelope, this piece of paper with cryptic words, was pulling me deeper into something I didn't understand. I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. It was almost 11 p.m., and the quiet of the apartment was suffocating. I hadn't bothered to turn on the TV or any lights. I didn't need distractions. I needed clarity. I picked up my phone and dialed the number that had called me earlier. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. The phone rang once, twice, and then finally clicked. Hello. The voice was the same. Low, almost a whisper. I don't understand what's happening, I said, my voice strained with anxiety. You said something's wrong. You said Sarah didn't leave because she wanted to. But why are you telling me this now? What do you know about her? What's going on? The voice on the other end paused, as if weighing my words. Greg, you're not ready for this. But I don't have a choice. I need to make sure you understand before it's too late. You've been a part of something much bigger than you think. I could hear the tension in their voice, like they were afraid of being overheard. But the more they spoke, the more I felt like I was standing on the edge of something huge, something dark. What do you mean by that? I asked, my words coming out in a rush. What am I part of? What's happening? There was another long pause, longer this time. Then the voice spoke again, slower, more deliberate. I can't tell you everything just yet, but you need to trust me. What you're about to learn will change your life. Sarah, she didn't just leave you. She was taken. And now, they're coming for you, too. The words struck me like lightning. My mind was racing. Taken? What did that even mean? Who would want to hurt Sarah? Why hadn't she said anything to me before she left? And why was I being dragged into this? I'm telling you this because I'm trying to help you, Greg. The voice continued, sounding almost pleading. You need to figure out who's behind this, and you need to do it now. Time is running out. I could feel my chest tightening, the weight of their words bearing down on me. I wanted to ask more questions, but the voice was already hanging up, leaving me in the deafening silence of my apartment. I stood there for a long moment, just trying to process what had just happened. My mind kept replaying the same questions over and over. Who was behind this? Why was Sarah in danger? And why now? The note, the phone call, the envelope. It was all connected, but the pieces weren't coming together. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there were things in Sarah's life that I had never known. I had always thought we shared everything, our hopes, our dreams, our fears. But now, I was starting to see the cracks, the things she had hidden from me. And whatever it was, whatever she had been running from, it was far more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. I spent the rest of the night thinking, pacing around my apartment, trying to figure out my next move. The only thing that kept repeating in my mind was the one thing I had to do: find out who was behind this. I didn't know what I would find, but I had to find Sarah. The next morning, I found myself standing outside her last known address, the apartment we had lived in before the divorce. I hadn't been back since she moved out. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find there. Maybe a clue, maybe something that would shed light on all of this. But as I stood there, I realized just how little I knew about what had been happening in her life. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt surreal, like I was living in a movie where none of this was actually happening to me. A few moments passed before the door creaked open, and there she was. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen her. But there was something else, something in her eyes, that told me she wasn't the woman I once knew. She was different. Greg, she said softly, her voice hesitant. What are you doing here? I couldn't find the words at first. I had so many questions, so many things I needed to know, but all I could manage was, I need to understand. What's going on, Sarah? What's really happening? Who's after you? Her face hardened, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear of me. I can't talk about this, Greg. You don't understand. I reached out, desperate. Please, just tell me the truth. I don't care about anything else. I just want to know what's going on. Who's behind all of this? She took a step back, shaking her head. You need to leave, Greg. You need to stay out of this. It's not safe for you. And with that, she closed the door. Just like that. I stood there, staring at the door, the unanswered questions swirling in my mind. There was something she wasn't telling me. Something she was hiding. Something that was dangerous. I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't leaving until I found out. Whatever it was, I was already in too deep. And there was no turning back now. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down at an unknown abyss. Everything I had once known about my life, about Sarah, about my marriage, was slipping through my fingers like sand. I had gone to her apartment to confront her, to force her to tell me what was really going on, but she shut me out. The door slammed in my face, and all I was left with was the lingering sense that there was something far more sinister happening behind the scenes. Something she was trying to protect me from. Something she was afraid to say. I stood there on the doorstep for a long time, the cold wind biting at my skin, as the realization set in. This wasn't just about a failed marriage. This wasn't just about her walking away. There was a deeper, darker layer to everything, and I was standing in the middle of it, completely blind. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. The envelope, the phone call, the cryptic warning that someone was after me. All of it was connected, and I had no choice but to follow this thread, no matter where it led. I turned and walked away from the apartment, my mind racing with a million thoughts. Who was behind this? What had Sarah gotten herself tangled up in? And why hadn't she told me anything? If she was truly in danger, why hadn't she trusted me enough to let me help? I needed answers, and the only way I was going to get them was by digging deeper, into Sarah's past, into her secrets, into everything she had kept from me. I didn't know where to start, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this go. I spent the next few hours combing through the apartment building, hoping to find some clue that would lead me to the truth. I spoke to the building manager, a woman who had seen Sarah every day before she left, but she didn't have much to say. She was always in a hurry, she told me. Rushed out the door, barely said goodbye. There was something off about her those last few weeks, but I didn't think much of it at the time. That was the problem. No one thought much of it. Everyone just assumed it was the end of a relationship, a routine breakup. But I knew better now. Something had happened. Something big. I wasn't sure what to do next, so I did what anyone would do when they had nowhere else to turn. I went to the one person who might know something. Emily. Emily was Sarah's sister, but she was more like the wild card in the family. She and I had always gotten along, but we weren't close. In fact, we had hardly spoken since the divorce. I didn't know if she would help me, or if she even knew anything, but I had to try. I called her. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Greg? Her voice was sharp, almost defensive. What do you want? Emily, I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about Sarah. Something's not right. I think she's in trouble. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, followed by a deep sigh. I figured you'd come around eventually, Emily said, her tone softening just a little. I didn't want to get involved, but I can't keep hiding this from you, Greg. I should have told you a long time ago. You're right. Sarah's in trouble. And now you are too. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. What do you mean? What's going on, Emily? She never told you the whole truth, Emily said, her voice cracking slightly. You have to understand, Greg, there's a reason Sarah left. It wasn't because she didn't love you. It wasn't because she wanted out of the marriage. It was because she was being threatened. There's a group of people, dangerous people, who have been after her for months. And now they're coming after you. I stood frozen, unable to speak. The room around me seemed to spin as Emily's words sank in. I don't understand, I said, my voice trembling. Who are these people? Why didn't she tell me? Emily sighed again, this time with a deep sense of regret. Sarah got caught up in something she couldn't control. She tried to protect you by cutting ties, by walking away, but it was never that simple. She didn't want you involved in this. But now, Greg, you're already involved. And it's not just about her anymore. They're coming for both of you. I could feel the blood drain from my face. This was so much bigger than I had ever imagined. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. What had Sarah gotten herself mixed up in? Why hadn't she told me? Why hadn't she trusted me to help her? I need you to tell me everything, Emily, I said, my voice urgent. Who are these people? What do they want? I don't know everything, Emily replied, her voice shaking. But I know they're part of something much bigger, something dangerous. Sarah got caught up in something she didn't understand at first. She thought she could handle it. But when they started threatening her, when they started controlling her every move, she realized too late that she was in over her head. And now, they want to make sure she can't expose them. Expose them? I asked, my mind reeling. What are they doing? I don't know, Emily admitted, her voice barely a whisper. But it's bad, Greg. It's really bad. And now you're on their radar too. You're connected to Sarah, and that makes you a target. I felt my pulse quicken as the weight of her words settled in. I had thought I was just dealing with a broken marriage, but now I was caught in the middle of something much darker. Something dangerous. Something I couldn't escape. I need to find her, Emily, I said, my voice firm. I need to know where she is. I need to help her. Emily hesitated before replying, her voice trembling with fear. I don't know where she is, Greg. But you're right to keep searching. Just be careful. Don't trust anyone. Not even me. Whoever's after Sarah, they're not going to stop. And they're not going to hesitate to hurt you too. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Emily's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone. The people after Sarah were dangerous, and now they were coming for me. I was in deeper than I realized, and there was no going back. I had no idea who these people were, or why they were after Sarah, but one thing was clear. I needed to find her before it was too late. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Every time I tried to fall asleep, my mind would replay the phone call with Emily, the words echoing like a broken record. Don't trust anyone. They're coming for you too. The weight of those words settled into my bones, an invisible pressure I couldn't shake off. I knew I had to find Sarah, but I had no idea where to start. She had disappeared, and no one seemed to have any real answers. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the list of people I knew could help, her old friends, her co-workers, anyone who might know where she had gone. But none of it seemed to lead anywhere. The hours stretched on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, waiting for something to happen. Something had to give. I couldn't just sit back and wait for the unknown to come knocking on my door. I had to take action. That's when I remembered something Sarah had told me a long time ago. She'd always been secretive about her work, but one night, after a few too many drinks, she'd let something slip. It's not what you think, she had said, staring into her wine glass. I work with people who deal with things that most people can't even imagine. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. It was one of those random comments you brush off after a night out. But now, in the context of everything that had happened, those words stuck with me. Things that most people can't even imagine. What did she mean? And who had she been working with? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Sarah's life was far more complicated than I had ever given her credit for. She hadn't just left me because she was tired of our marriage. No, there was something much deeper lurking beneath the surface, something she had tried desperately to shield me from. And now, it was threatening not just her, but me as well. I had to find out what she had been involved in, and I had to do it quickly. But I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to an old friend of mine, David, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. He was a private investigator, someone who dealt with the kinds of situations that were usually too messy for the police. I wasn't sure if he would even help me, but I had no other options. I called him early the next morning, hoping he'd pick up. David, I said when he answered. It's Greg. I need your help. There was a long pause before he responded. Greg? Wow, it's been a while. What's going on? I'm in trouble, I said, not bothering with pleasantries. Sarah's in trouble, and I need to find her. There's something bigger going on here, something dangerous. I don't know who I can trust anymore. I could hear the change in his tone as he processed my words. Okay, slow down. Tell me what's happening. I explained everything. The mysterious phone calls, the envelope, the cryptic message from Sarah, and Emily's warning. As I spoke, I could hear the skepticism in David's voice turn into concern. All right, listen, this is serious, he said. You're right to be worried. Whoever's behind this, they're not playing around. I can help you, but you need to trust me. This isn't something you can handle on your own. I was about to say something else when David cut me off. I need to ask you one thing, Greg. Are you sure you want to know the truth? Because once you start digging, there's no turning back. You'll be involved in this whether you like it or not. Are you prepared for that? I didn't even hesitate. Yes, I need to find Sarah, whatever it takes. David was quiet for a moment before he spoke again. All right, I'll start looking into it. I'll contact a few people I know, and we'll take it from there. But you have to promise me something. Don't go after this on your own. If you get caught up in this, it could get ugly. I understand, I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. Just get me answers, David. I need to know what's going on. After hanging up with David, I sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling a sense of unease creep over me. I was about to plunge headfirst into a world I didn't understand, a world full of shadows and hidden dangers. I didn't know who these people were or what they wanted, but one thing was becoming painfully clear. I had no choice but to get involved. I didn't wait for David to call me back. I couldn't afford to sit around any longer. I had to act, to find Sarah before things spiraled even further out of control. But where to start? That's when I remembered the strange behavior of her coworker, Derek. He had always been a bit too friendly with her, but there was something else, something that made me uncomfortable. He had asked her about her plans more than once, and I had caught him watching her a few times when he thought no one was paying attention. At the time, I had dismissed it as harmless, but now, I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he let on. Maybe he was involved in whatever Sarah was running from. I grabbed my coat and left my apartment, heading to the cafe where I knew Derek often went after work. I wasn't sure if he'd talk to me, but I had to try. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like the only lead I had. The cafe was quiet when I walked in, the faint hum of the espresso machine and the soft murmur of conversation in the background. I spotted Derek in the corner, sipping a coffee, his eyes fixed on his phone. He didn't see me at first, so I took a seat at the bar and waited. After a few minutes, I walked over to his table. "Derek," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected me to approach. His expression quickly shifted to one of forced politeness. "Greg, hey, what's up?" "I need to talk to you," I said, keeping my voice low. "It's about Sarah. I need to know what's going on." Derek's eyes flickered with something. Fear, maybe, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of indifference. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, brushing me off. "She left, Greg. That's it. End of story." But I wasn't about to back down. I leaned in closer. "I don't believe you. I know something happened, and I need you to tell me. Where is she, Derek? What do you know about the people she's been involved with?" Derek's face turned pale, and for a moment, I thought he might say something that would give me the answers I so desperately needed. But then, just as quickly, he stood up and walked out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, more confused than ever. The following days passed in a haze. I barely slept, my mind racing with all the fragments of information I had gathered and the dark corners I had yet to explore. Derek's strange reaction when I confronted him haunted me. He knew something. I could feel it in the way his eyes darted away from mine, in the hesitation before he left the cafe without a word. But what could it mean? I couldn't be sure, but it was clear that he was hiding something that tied directly into Sarah's disappearance. I tried calling David, but he didn't pick up. I was starting to wonder if I had made a mistake involving him. Could he have been too deep in his own web of contacts and secrets? I didn't know what to think anymore. My anxiety was eating at me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts, making it harder to trust anyone, especially myself. The only thing I was certain of was that I was trapped in a game I didn't understand, a game where the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. As each day passed, the walls seemed to close in tighter, and the sense of dread grew more unbearable. Every time the phone rang, my heart skipped a beat. Every knock at the door made me jump. But then, a breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. It was a Thursday afternoon when I received an anonymous email. At first, I almost deleted it. The subject line was too vague, just, "You need to know the truth." It was one of those emails that seemed like spam, until I saw the attachment. The file name was simple, Sarah_secret. PDF. I couldn't open it fast enough. My fingers trembled as I clicked on the attachment, the screen flashing briefly before the document opened. My eyes scanned the words quickly, desperate to see what it contained. The document was a report. A detailed report outlining a series of transactions, meetings, and names I didn't recognize. It read like a corporate dossier, but the deeper I read, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary business matter. The names were connected to a series of shell companies, most of which seemed to operate in the shadows of legitimate industries. The more I looked, the more I realized that these people were experts at hiding their tracks. But one name, buried toward the end of the document, caught my eye: Dominic Vale. The name struck me like a bolt of lightning. Dominic Vale. I had heard the name before. Sarah had mentioned him once, a long time ago. He was a powerful businessman, an investor in multiple industries, but the most unsettling thing about him was his reputation. People whispered about him in hushed tones. They said he controlled things from the shadows. But I had never thought it would be connected to Sarah. The report went on to detail several meetings between Sarah and Dominic Vale, none of which I had ever known about. My stomach dropped as I read about Sarah's involvement in a deal she had been trying to back out of, a deal that, according to the report, had involved illegal activities, bribery, and something much more dangerous than I could have imagined. Sarah, what did you get yourself into? I thought, panic rising in my chest. The more I read, the clearer it became that Sarah had stumbled into something she couldn't escape. But what was her role in all of this? Why had she gotten involved with Dominic Vale in the first place? I couldn't understand it. But the answers I was looking for were buried somewhere within these papers, and I was determined to dig them up. I clicked on the next file in the email. It was another report, this time outlining a series of transfers to offshore accounts. The figures were staggering: millions of dollars, all funneled through various shell companies. The pattern was clear now. This wasn't just about business deals or shady investments. These people were laundering money, using powerful connections to cover their tracks. And Sarah had been right in the middle of it. I was interrupted by the sudden sound of my phone vibrating on the table. I glanced at the screen. It was David. I picked up immediately. David, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. I know, I'm sorry. I've been tied up, he replied, his voice strained. Listen, Greg, you need to be careful. This isn't just some business deal gone wrong. This is bigger than anything we've anticipated. The people after you and Sarah, they're not playing around. They'll do whatever it takes to silence anyone who knows too much. You're already in too deep. What do you mean? I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. What's going on? Who are these people? David paused for a moment, as if weighing his words. I've been digging into Dominic Vale, he said. He's not just a businessman. He's part of something much darker. He has connections all over the world, people in high places. He doesn't just make money. He controls people, Greg. He uses them, and when they're no longer useful, he disposes of them. My mind was racing. Are you saying Sarah's in danger because of him? What did she get herself involved in? Not just her, David said quietly. You're in danger too, Greg. You've been connected to her. And now that you've started asking questions, you've caught their attention. I could feel the blood drain from my face. The walls were closing in. I was too close to the truth, and now there was no escaping it. I barely heard David's next words. Greg, you need to disappear. You need to lay low for a while. They'll come for you, just like they did for Sarah. And if you don't want to end up like the others, you need to trust me on this. I couldn't breathe. The threat felt too real, too imminent. My entire body felt like it was vibrating with fear, but I knew I couldn't back down. I had already come too far. I can't just run, I said, my voice shaking. I need to find Sarah. I need to know what happened to her. David was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, his voice low. I can help you, Greg, but you need to understand something. If you keep going down this path, you'll be walking straight into the lion's den, and there's no telling if you'll make it out alive. The days after David's warning felt like a blur, a suffocating fog that I couldn't escape from no matter how hard I tried. My every move was weighed down by the knowledge that the people behind Sarah's disappearance were now watching me too. My mind raced constantly. Who were these people? Why had Sarah been involved with Dominic Vale? And more importantly, what did they want from me? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted, that at any moment, someone would knock on my door and drag me into the nightmare that had consumed Sarah's life. But despite the fear gnawing at me, I knew I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving forward. I had to find her, whatever the cost. I spent the following days piecing together fragments of information, trying to make sense of the chaos. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Every conversation felt like a potential trap, every glance a calculated move in a game I didn't fully understand. But I had no choice but to keep playing. That's when I decided to go to the one place where I might find answers, Dominic Vale's company. His empire of secrecy. I had no idea how I would get inside, but it felt like the only lead left. If anyone knew the truth about Sarah, it would be him, or at least someone close to him. I had no intention of confronting him directly. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't that reckless. But I could get close. I could start asking questions under the radar. Dominic Vale's network was vast, but it wasn't invisible. People talked, and there were always cracks in the armor, if you knew where to look. I spent hours researching his company, sifting through public records and online articles. Everything about him seemed spotless, clean. The perfect businessman, the kind of man who built his empire with charm and precision. But there was something about him that didn't sit right with me. The more I dug, the more I found mentions of him in connection with shady deals, anonymous tip-offs, and blackmail allegations. All whispers in the dark, with no real proof to back them up. It was the kind of information you had to dig deep for, the kind that most people never cared to look for. But I wasn't most people, and I wasn't stopping until I had the answers. I managed to track down the address of his company's headquarters, a sleek, glass building in the heart of the city, the kind of place you'd expect a billionaire like Vale to operate from. I stood outside the building the following afternoon, staring up at it. The sun reflected off the glass, casting a harsh glare that made it impossible to see inside. It was an impenetrable fortress of wealth and power, designed to keep people like me out. But I wasn't just anyone. I walked into the lobby with purpose, my heart pounding in my chest. The receptionist gave me a polite, almost bored smile as I approached the desk. "Can I help you?" she asked, barely glancing up from her computer screen. "I need to speak with someone from the finance department," I said, trying to sound confident. "I have some questions about a project Sarah Collins was working on. It's urgent." The receptionist didn't seem fazed by my vague request. She typed something into her computer and then looked back up at me. "I'll check with the department head," she said, her voice flat. "Please wait." I barely managed to suppress a sigh of relief. This was my chance. I wasn't sure what I would learn, but this was the first real lead I'd had in days. I needed to know everything Sarah had been involved in. I sat in the lobby, waiting. The minutes felt like hours as my mind churned with questions. What was Sarah really working on? Why was she mixed up with someone like Dominic Vale? Eventually, a man in his early 30s approached me. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his hair perfectly combed. He didn't look like the type of person who would be involved in anything dangerous, but appearances could be deceiving. "Mr. Collins?" he said, extending his hand. "I'm Thomas. I understand you had some questions about Sarah?" I shook his hand, trying to keep my nerves in check. "Yes, that's right. I've been trying to get in touch with her, but I haven't heard from her in weeks. I know she was working on a big project for Vale Industries, and I was hoping you could help me find out more about what she was involved in." Thomas nodded, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of hesitation, almost like he was measuring me, trying to figure out what I wanted. Sarah was one of our top analysts. She was working on several high-profile projects, but her recent work, it wasn't exactly in her usual area of expertise. She became involved in some delicate financial operations for Mr. Vale. Unfortunately, I can't provide too many details. Corporate confidentiality, you understand. I leaned forward slightly, trying to appear casual, but my mind was already running a mile a minute. Delicate financial operations? What did that mean? Was it all just business, or was there something more to it? "I understand," I said, "but I'm her ex-husband, and it's important. If she's in trouble, I need to know what she was working on. Was it something dangerous?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I could feel the tension in the air shift, as if the conversation had suddenly veered into territory neither of us was prepared for. Thomas's expression hardened, and for the briefest moment, I thought he was going to refuse to say anything further. But then his face softened, just slightly, and he glanced around the lobby before lowering his voice. "There are things you don't know about Vale," he said quietly. "Things about the company that they don't let people talk about. You're better off walking away from this, Mr. Collins. It's not just your ex-wife who's in danger. You don't want to get involved." His words hung in the air like a warning. I was getting closer to the truth, closer to understanding why Sarah had been pulled into this mess. But the more I learned, the more I realized just how deep and dangerous this all was. I stood up slowly, trying not to betray the shock I felt. Thank you for your time, Thomas. I'll keep that in mind. As I turned to leave, I felt his eyes on me, a silent plea for me to walk away from the whole thing. But I couldn't. I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. Whatever this was, whatever Vale was hiding, I was going to find out. And nothing was going to stop me. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me as I walked out of the sleek glass building that housed Vale Industries. My mind was spinning with the conversation I had just had with Thomas. There was something in his eyes, a sense of urgency buried beneath his calm exterior. He knew more than he was letting on, about Sarah, about Vale, about the danger I was now in. But he wasn't willing to say it outright. That hesitation, it wasn't just fear, it was the mark of someone who had seen the underbelly of the world I was stepping into. And I was only getting closer. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep playing the game of subtlety. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that the truth was much darker than I could have imagined. Every step I took forward felt like I was getting sucked deeper into a rabbit hole, a place where I couldn't distinguish friend from foe. There was no turning back. If I was going to find Sarah, if I was going to get out of this alive, I had to keep pushing forward. As I made my way back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The city felt different now, darker, more ominous. Every pedestrian I passed, every car that drove by, felt like part of a web of eyes, following my every move. I couldn't trust anyone. I wasn't even sure I could trust David anymore. The message he had left me a few days ago still lingered in my mind. Stay away from this. They'll come for you. They'll find you. I had ignored his advice, but now, I wondered if I had made a mistake. I unlocked the door to my apartment and stepped inside, closing it quietly behind me. My thoughts were a whirlwind as I started to pace, trying to make sense of everything. Sarah's involvement with Vale, her strange behavior leading up to her disappearance, and now Thomas's cryptic warnings. It was all connected, but the pieces weren't falling into place. Yet, my phone rang, breaking the silence. It was an unknown number, but the area code was familiar, too familiar. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? The voice on the other end was calm, collected, but there was an edge to it, something cold. Greg Collins, the voice said, pronouncing my name with a deliberate pause. I hear you've been asking questions. That's a dangerous game to play. My pulse quickened. I didn't recognize the voice, but I knew instantly it wasn't a coincidence. Who is this? You don't need to know my name, the voice replied. But I'm in a position to help you, Greg. You're digging into things you don't understand. You've found the surface, but you have no idea what lies beneath. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I want to know the truth. About Sarah. About Vale. The voice chuckled softly, the sound sending a chill through me. The truth? The truth is dangerous. Do you really want it? You think you can handle what you'll find? No one comes out of this unscathed, Greg. No one. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Why are you calling me? What do you want? I'm calling because I can help you. The voice continued, unfazed by my demand. You're playing with fire, and unless you want to get burned, you'll stop what you're doing. You'll walk away from Sarah and Vale, and everything will go back to normal. No more questions. No more digging. No, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I'm not walking away. I'm not going to stop until I find out what happened to her. There was a pause on the other end, and then the voice came back, colder than before. Fine. Then you're in for a rough ride. But just know this. Once you cross that line, you won't be able to go back. The people you're dealing with aren't just businessmen. They don't play by the rules. And they don't let people go. The line went dead. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand, a cold sweat prickling on the back of my neck. My head was spinning. Who was that? The voice had been so calm, so calculated, it sent a shiver down my spine. I had already felt like I was being watched, but now it was more than just a feeling. I had no doubt anymore. Someone was tracking my every move. Someone powerful. Someone dangerous. I had been warned. But the more they tried to push me away, the more determined I became to get to the heart of this. Sarah's life, my life, was entangled in something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. But the truth was out there, hidden somewhere beneath layers of lies, corruption, and deceit. And I wasn't going to stop until I uncovered it. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. There was no time to waste. I needed to figure out who had been behind that phone call, who was trying to scare me into silence. I couldn't let fear control me. Not now. I pulled up the file on Dominic Vale that I had started compiling days ago. There was something else I hadn't noticed before. A name. It was buried at the bottom of a legal document, a mention in passing, almost like an afterthought. But it was a name I had seen before. A name I hadn't yet connected to Vale. Marcus Devereux. I ran a search. What I found made my stomach drop. Marcus Devereux was an associate of Vale's, one of his highest-ranking partners. But Devereux's name came up in more than just business dealings. There were rumors that he was involved in illegal activities, that he had connections to organized crime, that he wasn't just a businessman, but someone who controlled things in the shadows. And now, somehow, he was tied to Vale's empire. To Sarah. To me. The pieces were falling into place now, but the puzzle was still far from complete. I knew I had to confront this head-on. I couldn't keep running from the truth, no matter how terrifying it was. I grabbed my jacket and headed out of the apartment. I didn't know where I was going exactly, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I had to find out who Marcus Devereux was, and what role he played in all of this. I needed to get closer to Vale's world, and I needed to do it before it was too late. The darkness was closing in around me, but I couldn't stop now. I had already crossed the line, and there was no going back. I walked through the night, the weight of everything I had uncovered pushing me forward. The city felt different now, the shadows darker, the silence heavier. But somehow, amidst the dread and confusion, I found a strange sense of purpose. Every lead, every piece of information, every risk I had taken had led me to this moment. I couldn't stop now, not when I was so close. I arrived at a small office building on the outskirts of the city. Nothing special, but the kind of place where secrets were buried. Marcus Devereux's name was connected to this building in more ways than one. It was where several of Vale's shell companies had registered their offices, and it was here I believed the final answers would be hidden. I had already mapped out my plan in my head. There was no room for hesitation now. I needed to face whatever, or whoever, was waiting for me inside. I stepped through the front doors, past the receptionist who barely glanced up as I walked by. The building was quiet, and the dim lighting cast an eerie glow over the hallways. I could hear the echo of my footsteps as I made my way down a narrow corridor, following my instincts toward a door at the end. This was it. I was about to confront the person who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, the person who had made Sarah's life, and mine, a living nightmare. I knocked once, then opened the door. Inside, a figure sat behind a large desk, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the stern features of Marcus Devereux. His eyes flickered up as I entered, a faint smirk playing on his lips. It was as if he had been expecting me. "Greg Collins," he said smoothly, his voice laced with something dark and calculating. "I wondered when you'd come." I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Where is Sarah?" I demanded, my voice steady but intense. "What have you done to her?" Devereux leaned back in his chair, the smirk never leaving his face. "Ah, Sarah. A woman with too many questions, too much curiosity. But you, Greg, you've crossed a line. You should have stayed out of this. You had no idea what you were up against." "I know enough now," I shot back. "I know about your operations, the money laundering, the illegal dealings. I know about Vale's empire. And I know you're at the center of it all." He sighed, almost bored by my words. "You think you've uncovered something important? It's all just business, Greg. The world runs on power and influence. Vale and I, we're simply playing the game." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "Sarah didn't sign up for this. You used her, manipulated her, and now she's gone. I won't stop until I find her." For the first time, Devereux's smirk faltered. His eyes darkened, and for a brief moment, I saw the flicker of something dangerous behind his calm exterior. But then, just as quickly, he regained his composure, his expression cold again. "I didn't use her, Greg," he said, his voice low. "Sarah made her own choices. She knew what she was getting involved in." "Then why is she missing?" I shot back. "Why has she been running from you?" The silence in the room stretched, and for a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he leaned forward, his tone shifting, almost reluctantly. "She tried to back out. She realized too late that she was in over her head. When she wanted out, it wasn't as simple as walking away. People like me don't let go easily." I could feel the tension in the air, thick with the weight of his words. But just as quickly, something unexpected happened. The door behind me opened, and I turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but she was alive. She wasn't alone, either. Behind her stood David, his face serious but relieved to see me. "Sarah?" I whispered, my voice breaking as I stepped toward her. "You're okay. I thought I'd lost you." Sarah gave me a small, tired smile, but there was strength in her eyes. "You didn't lose me, Greg. I'm sorry for everything. I should have trusted you, but I was scared. They threatened me. They tried to control me." Devereux stood up, his calm facade cracking for the first time. "She was mine to control, Greg. You don't just walk away from people like me." But Sarah's voice was firm now, the power of her resolve filling the room. "No, Marcus. You don't control me anymore." She looked at me, her eyes softening. "I'm done running. I'm done being afraid. We're going to stop this, Greg. Together." David stepped forward, his tone commanding. "It's over, Marcus. We've gathered enough evidence to bring you down. You can't hide behind your empire anymore." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a sense of peace washed over me. The darkness that had clouded everything for so long was finally lifting. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, I knew that we were going to fight for the truth. Marcus Devereux's empire was crumbling. The truth was out, and we had the power to bring it all down. In the weeks that followed, everything started to change. The authorities moved in, seizing records, arresting key players, and dismantling the network that had kept Vale and Devereux's operations alive for years. The people who had manipulated Sarah, who had used fear to control her, were held accountable for their actions. Sarah and I took the time to rebuild our trust, our connection, our lives. The road ahead wasn't easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. We had both been broken by the secrets and lies that had tried to tear us apart, but together, we were stronger than ever. The truth, as painful as it was, had set us free. It wasn't just about uncovering the darkness. It was about embracing the light that followed. We had won, and now, we had the chance to start over. Together.